Hey everyone, my name is Lamar with the Healthcare Digital Marketing Podcast. I'm excited about this episode with John Sanders. John, you've been running RevKey for about, I think, since 2018.
Right.
Also, you focus on a very niche kind of marketing strategy in terms of providing measurable Google Ad results to therapists. So I'm
Right.
excited to just have you unpack all of your experiences, your background. So without further ado, for you to just open up and give the audience some insights on who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I got started with Google Ads about 16 years ago now. It, as a marketing manager, which is about the most general title that you can have in the business world, which basically means anything that the owner of the company doesn't know what to do with, they're going to throw your way.
Yeah.
Uh, and my first job in Google Ads was not to figure out how to do the technical stuff within Google Ads, but to figure out was it making money for our company.
Right.
So I really have kind of continued that philosophy, and that's something that I'm always wanting to make sure of is that yeah, you can have all of the great technical stats that you want,
Yep.
but you need to make sure that it's actually turning into customers and revenue for you.
Right. Right.
Fast forward into 2015, I took a job with a dental marketing agency to run their PPC department or Google Ads department and build that up for them.
Nice.
Built that from a very small chunk of their company up to a million plus in revenue for them before I decided I wanted to be my own boss and I went out and started RevKey. Um, Also, during that time, my wife, who is a psychologist, was starting her private practice. And so
Mm,
during the day, I was doing Google Ads for dentist. And then at night, I'm trying to figure out how to get this psychologist who just started her practice full. And as we were talking about before, there's a lot of overlap between those two things. So
right.
um, what we've been able to do is really kind of take a lot of those principles that I learned in dentistry and then, move those over to therapy. And they work on, so many other cases along the lines of doctors and chiropractors and things along those lines where, we're trying to keep it in within a certain area, we're hunting for a specific type of client. So,
Yeah.
a lot of those principles just kind of overlap.
So how, like, so I mean, that's a long time, right? And so you have a lot of, knowledge and industry experience. What made you say, hey, this is what I want to do in terms of Google Ads, for my career?
I think it's the measurability of it, because when you say marketing to people, they'll be like, "Oh, do you make logos?" No,
Yeah.
no, I don't.
Yep.
I don't do that. I'm like the visual stuff is definitely my weakness. I would say I'm very much a numbers marketer,
Yeah.
where I want to look at conversion rates and how much you are paying for each of your leads, and those are the things that I'm more concerned with. There's the visual stuff, all very important, but there are other people for that, and
Yeah.
I'm definitely not it, and I recognize that as a weakness of mine, and so I definitely, if something like that comes up, I'm quick to move that over to somebody else who's better at than I am.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's you're sticking to what you're really good at, and I think that's why you
Right.
are where you're at today, right? In terms of running your own company, and so like working in the Google Ads space for that long, I'm sure you've seen a lot of mistakes. What's the biggest mistake when it comes to Google Ads, and how did you fix it?
The biggest mistake in Google Ads, it's changed over time, but I think it's probably just letting Google do whatever it wants. And back in the day, we had these things called smart campaigns, or
Yep.
using broad match keywords, things like that that gives Google a lot of latitude to show your ads to people who probably don't need to be seeing your
Right.
ads.
Right.
Uh, and as somebody who creates Google ads for people, is that I don't work for Google. I work for you, and I
Yeah,
want
that's
you to
smart.
be successful. Whereas Google, in a lot of cases, I think that their suggestions are based on, they want to try out, the new feature and they want to gather some data on it, and they're willing to let you be a guinea pig for it.
And by the way, they want to make money. Google wants to make money.
Well, and what I tell people is a lot of people will ask, is AI going to take your job? Is Google going to get rid of you? Are you guys, people like you going to become obsolete? And I think the answer is no. And because Google's number one priority is always going to be that economic, maximize the revenue for their company.
Right.
And their secondary concern is whether you're getting business. And
Yeah.
whereas, I want to see my number one priority is you getting business, not necessarily to help Google. Google will be fine. They have enough money
Yep.
already. They're going to be good. So we don't need to worry about them too much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I guess like thinking about your wife's practice, right? She's a psychologist. I'm sure when you were like, managing her Google Ads campaigns and you did benchmark measurements of like the competitors, how did you say, here's how you're going to compete with, some bigger corporations? And I guess just like an overall view of working with local businesses, trying to compete with bigger competitors because they have larger budgets. Would just be, interested to hear your take on how to maximize that.
Well, I think, if we're talking about on the therapy side, there's things like BetterHelp and Talkspace and things like that, who are, these large corporations that spend millions of dollars on Google Ads a month. But in your local market, they can still only appear in one of those sponsored spots
Yeah.
at the top of Google. So they might even have the first one. Um, but you can still be there. And I think that there's an authenticity to being local in that area versus, yeah. And I think over time, those bigger companies have gotten some pretty well earned bad reputations for
Yeah.
not being high quality services. So yeah, your website might not, you haven't spent $1 million on your website like those guys at BetterHelp have, but I think that there is the advantage of being local and appearing like a human and not, a giant corporation. And there's still definitely room for your practice to succeed, whatever that is.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think too, just dominating the landscape, like from like what you guys do, right? From a Google Ads standpoint, and then, coupling that with SEO. So like if
Right.
your ads are showing up at the top or, top three, your Google My Business profile showing up top three in the map packs, and then also your website showing up top three in the organic search results. That's where the user is seeing you, in multiple spots, right? And so it just allows you to kind of dominate that space to increase conversions. And what we like, to your point, we used to work with like a pharmacy, right? And this pharmacy is competing against Walgreens, CVS, and these big corporations. But what you find, and to your point, it's like they don't really focus on the local level as much as you think they do. They just want to expand nationwide as much as possible. And it was so easy, honestly, from an SEO standpoint, to rank them in the search results for their targeted keywords in that local area because you could just see the competition wasn't building backlinks as consistently. They were not optimizing their landing pages. They were not creating content consistently on their blog pages. So, and then coupling that with ads, I think it makes a big difference. So I think you're absolutely right. And then I know like with AI, right? Everyone's talking about AI. And so to your point earlier, AI is making people wary about, their jobs. But with AI reshaping Google Ads and what's happening on that, with those strategies, what would you tell a marketer like how to embrace it and look for opportunities utilizing AI?
So that's something that's very much emerging right now. Google is talking about how that's going to work. There's been some talk of uh, Google Ads being put into Google's Gemini AI. We'll see what that looks like. As of when we're recording this, ChatGPT is, according to OpenAI, is going to have some ads on it for free users later this year, and so we're going to have to kind of see what all of that looks like. But especially if you're in the digital marketing space, you essentially have to embrace the chaos
Yeah.
in this case, and just you have to move with the changes. Uh, what I see from a number of people who will come to me and say, "Hey, I'm running Google Ads with somebody else," and they're running the Google Ad strategies of literally 10 years ago, and that's that is not going to work. I'm like, yeah, this was great in 2015, but this isn't going to work anymore. So I think it's really trying to keep up with the technology. One of the things that we've done in the last year is there's a newer type of Google Ads campaign called Performance Max that's been around now for I think about 4 years, um, and it got a lot more information last year where we can now see, are your ads showing up in search? Are they showing on display? Are they showing up on YouTube? And that was a really big thing for us. We can also now see uh, search terms that are coming into your campaign, and we didn't have access to any of that before, and so that has made that a much better tool in a lot of ways, and we're starting to use that a lot more than even like some of the old traditional search campaigns that we used to really depend on. So I think it's really just keeping up with everything is really kind of how you have to handle this, and not going with the idea, well, this is how I've always done it, so this will always work. That just doesn't work in the digital space.
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. And then how about, do you do anything with guaranteed Google Ads?
With guaranteeing whether they're going to work.
Or no, like, you know how Google does the guaranteed ads badge now for like some local businesses?
So you're talking about the local service
Yeah.
ads, which they do not have for therapists. It's very interesting that you bring that up, because now that we've recently added some pages around chiropractors and dentists, and that is available for them. So that is something that we're going to be working on this year in terms of kind of how to incorporate that piece in there. I have a couple of members of my team who have used local service ads in the past, um, and so like helping to manage with that, and to go back to what you were saying earlier, is that if you can be in those sponsored Google Ads results, and you can be in those local service ads results, which are two different things, and then you can be in the map, and you can be or in there organically. I often say that it's like a grocery store shelf, and you're trying to get all of the prime space, and you're trying to push your competitors off to the
Yep.
side.
Yep.
So and so that's if that's available for your industry, that's one more tool that you should definitely be using, because that is going to be one more space. And in the case of the local service ads, is that you're paying by lead, which is also a really good way to do it, instead of paying by impression, or even paying by click like you are with Google Ads. So there's definitely, for the local service ads, definitely has some advantages.
Awesome. And then I guess one other question would be, do you ever bid on competitor keywords, even though the user is searching for that competitor?
This is a very divisive topic, I think, among Google Ads managers, and I very much come down on I don't want that traffic.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because if they're looking for them, in a lot of cases, they are already a patient. And here's I think the biggest problem with it is, if you do that and they get confused, or the user gets confused and calls you, that is wasting time for your admin to figure that out. You're wasting a minute of their time, and that will add up over time. Also, it's very frustrating for them.
Yeah.
I've definitely heard a number of stories from especially dentists who are like, we keep getting calls for other practices, and it
Mm.
it drives the front office staff crazy. So
Oh, I can
I am
imagine.
very much anti um, trying to bid on competitor keywords, and I know there are a bunch of people out there who say that it's a good idea. I completely disagree with that philosophy. I think you're really just going to get a bunch of bad traffic. Yeah, it might be inexpensive, because um, you know it's less expensive than say like dentist near me or a therapist near me, but it's overall it's not good traffic for you.
Yeah, I agree because I think you're just to your point, wasting time and dollars for the practice, and that's not what you want. Because then they're going to be upset with you because the front desk is feeling the pain from a lot of these leads or these calls that are
Right.
coming in, and so that's going to eventually come back to the marketing group. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I guess last question for you would be like a 90-day game plan. Like, do you have any like action items that, hey, if a marketer or a therapist was listening to this episode, what does a 90-day game plan look like with maybe three actionable steps?
So 90 days is actually kind of the timeline that I use for that's probably at day 90 is probably the first time you can say whether your Google ads are being successful from a number standpoint. So
Got it.
you might have 600 clicks. So I mean, I think the question is how many leads did you get from that, and how many of those leads turned into patients,
Yeah.
and then kind of what is the value of those patients, and comparing those two numbers and saying, okay, did you get a 5-to-1 return on your ad spend? Did you get a 10-to-1, 15? And in some cases, you can get much higher than that. I really view that first 30 days as you're trying to make sure that you're targeting the right zip codes,
Yeah.
you're getting the right search terms, that conversion tracking on your website that is, in many cases really difficult to get to work, because you're dealing with all of these, different pieces of software to getting them to talk to each other. So the first 30 days is very much kind of that shakedown cruise period where you might not necessarily get anything. I mean, usually I think you can, but I think it also depends on the industry. If you're trying to target something that's really difficult, and there are a lot of competitors for it, can be a lot harder. Um, but really, it's over those 90 days, you want to be eliminating those bad search terms and putting those in as negative keywords so your ads don't show up for them, for services that you don't provide, or competitor names. If I talk to any of my account managers, they'll probably say that competitor names are probably one of the main things that they're taking from a search term list and saying,
Yeah.
do not show my ad for if somebody searches something
Yeah.
related to this, because Google will try to, because they're trying to sell as much advertising inventory as they can.
Right. Right.
So I think that those are probably some of the most important things. And yeah, if you're running your ads yourself, I would say probably the most important screen that you can look at in Google Ads is your search term report,
Mm.
which is under the insight menu. And if you look at that and you're happy with the search terms you see, your ads are probably going to do fairly well.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're a therapist and you're seeing a bunch of keywords or search terms for massage therapy, you're in trouble, and
Yeah.
something needs to change. So um, those are probably a couple of the first things that you're dealing with in that first 90 days. And I think it probably, to extend out, I think it's probably 6 months where whether you can really definitively say, yes, this is working really well, or no, this is not working well. I think at 90 days you can say, okay, this is really working well, maybe let's spend some more budget on it if it's
Right.
working well. And if it's not working well, really kind of figuring out an action plan of, what needs to change and what type of searches you need to avoid to be successful.
Yeah, and it sounds like to me what you're saying is the first 90 days is getting your ads dialed in because Google still has to learn your ad campaigns and what you're trying
Right.
to optimize for. And you mentioned negative keywords. How often are you evaluating negative keywords throughout the month?
Oh, every week. I mean, that's probably, when my account managers are going in, that's probably one of the first things they're looking at is those search terms, because that really is, in my opinion, the most important screen in Google Ads.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that if you can get good search terms over to your website, and if your website is performing, which is really very much the other side of this, is that you do have to have your website ready for Google Ads. You cannot have the dreaded bullet point service page that's like, we do this, and this, and that all of those probably just need to go off and live and be their own pages. And also that's going to help the SEO stuff as well.
Yeah.
Um, it is you definitely have to have all of those things in place, and you do have to have a good website in place really to convert those Google ads, because realistically people are going to look at my ads for maybe a couple of seconds before they click over to your website,
Yeah.
where hopefully they're going to spend an average of 50 seconds a minute and hopefully take that action that we want them to take, which is fill out that form, do that thing with the auto schedule, or even if it's the olden days, actually call somebody.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so you make me think of another question when it comes to the website aspect of it. Do you typically have like a dedicated landing page for ads and optimize, that page, or do you really, send them to the actual website?
Another very divisive topic in digital marketing. I
Yeah,
really come down on, especially for therapists, the side of I just want to take them to your website, because the idea of, if you've got, well, we'll use a dental example. So you've got a page on your website that is about dental implants. And then you've got a landing page over here that's specifically for your PPC campaign, also for dental implants. Why don't you just use the effort that you would put into both of those and just make one really good page on
yeah,
your website? Um, and I think specifically for therapists, and I think that this would be a major difference here, is that this is the person that you're going to tell your deepest, darkest secrets to. They're going to want to go look at your bio and like make sure that you're a good fit. So I think it does maybe depend on the industry, but for the most part, my philosophy is put it on your website, make as good of a service page as you can, and point it there. I also think that I think users think it's a little weird, if they're locked in on that landing page that doesn't have, a lot of navigation options. I think that there's kind of a psychological aspect that kind of weirds them out, where
yeah,
it's like they can't see anything else, and it's just, uh, you know, get in my funnel, fill out the form. That's all we really want you to do. Is just fill out this form real quick, and then we'll do the rest. So um, I do think that you have to build up trust with that user. And so yeah, I'm
yeah,
very much a website guy. And once again, let's help that SEO, and so you
yeah.
can win both from a Google Ads perspective and an organic perspective.
Yeah, 'cause it sounds like what you're saying is don't make the experience fully sponsored because people can see it says sponsored ad,
Yeah,
or sponsored section in Google. So if you only have one landing page and they can't really experience the whole story, you're kind of making that fully sponsored. And so they don't want to be tricked. Is kind of what I'm hearing from you. And then
right.
I guess two more questions. Is there a sweet spot on the budget? Like how do you figure out, what's the best budget to get the most, profitability in terms of new patients?
I think the two questions that you have to ask for that is, one, market, and then two, what are how quickly do you need, how many new patients do you ultimately need a month? So, um, you know, if we're talking about Little Rock, Arkansas versus New York City, those are going to be two completely different budgets.
Yeah.
And in New York, you probably need to be prepared to spend, 2 to 3 times what the guy in Little Rock, Arkansas is going to pay.
Right.
So in a lot of cases, I think you can start Google Ads at least on the mental health level, and I think this probably also apply to dentistry. Anywhere between like 500 to 1,000 is probably like a good place to start. But then it really does come down to, how many open spots do you have in your practice that you are looking to fill in a month.
Yeah.
And I think it's really probably those two factors that will determine a budget. I think that 500 to 1,000, that's from like a very Google perspective of like, what you're going to get in terms of cost per click. But the second part is very much focused on your business and the results that ultimately you need from a business side of things. So once again, we're dealing with the realities of your business, not just what's happening in Google Ads.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I guess you mentioned something earlier, and to close this, like how do you show true ROI, right? Like how do you show this person called from this ad, and they end up, becoming a patient, and their profitability or revenue for that practice is X. Like, how do you truly show that? Because I know a lot of practices are not gonna just give you login to their patient management software. Maybe they will, but just curious of how do you really show that data?
It really requires a good partnership with the back end of the practice is really key for this, and why I've seen a number of Google Ads campaigns fail, not because of Google Ads, not because of websites, but what happens after the lead is gotten, and if the back office is not calling those leads really fast,
Yeah.
or if there's some hiccup in your in your onboarding process, you're going to have issues.
Yeah.
Um, so sorry about that. I froze.
It's all good.
um, what was the question again, man?
It was just about like showing the ROI and like the marketing attribution to the revenue. So like, how do we know
Yep.
this ad got this customer and they're paying this, much in the practice?
Right. And so from our perspective, it's comparing those conversions to, what you got off of your Calendly schedule or Acuity or, those forms, and being able to match up those names. And then really the back end being able to then go on and say, okay, this person became a customer, and, we expect that they're going to be here, uh, 18 sessions, or they're going to be with us, for X amount of time. So it's really requires a really good partnership between the Google Ads people and the back end to be able to kind of see what that looks like.
Awesome, awesome. Well, John, this has been great. I appreciate you kind of packing all of those insights, and this is really valuable information. And I think a lot of nuggets when it comes to like how to manage your Google Ads campaign, especially if you're a therapist or a doctor or a small business, wherever it is. But if someone wanted to contact you, like, what's the best way to reach out?
Sure. The best way to contact us is to go to revkey.com. That's RevKey.com/podcasts. And go ahead and fill out that form like we were just talking about. And we'll go ahead and get a sales call booked with you. And, we can talk about the individual needs for your practice.
Awesome. Thank you. And we'll include that information in the show notes. John, we appreciate your time. We'll get this aired out, and thank you again for providing so much valuable information. I'm Lamar with the Healthcare Digital Marketing Podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Lamar.